Right, hello, this is Neil from iPaintGirls.com. You can visit the website to look at more free videos and also check out my comic book End of All if you want to. Under layers here I have this layer turned off, the under layer, which was the sketch layer we scanned in. So I have that turned off. Now I just have this layer turned on. I wanted to show you a few other things really quick with Illustrator to get different things going for you that you need to work the best way possible. So for example, double click on this and make sure that Fill New Brushes, Fill New Brush Strokes is selected. Then down here make sure that the background one is black and the foreground one is transparent, like so. Now what this allows you to do is draw shapes and then it'll fill in that shape. So let's say you draw a shape like that, it fills that shape in. This is an easy way to come in and do some of these shadows that you might want, like so. I can fill that shape in. And so what I'm doing is all the parts where thicker hairs are overlapping, I'm just kind of throwing in some of those shapes in there to add. So I could trace that shape, and I didn't trace it right. Come back up there like that. And let's say I wanted some shadow in this part here. So it's a really quick way to add shape shadows like that. Just trying to see if there's any other places where it might benefit. Let's say I wanted a lot of this big part over here in shadow. Now this would only work if I'm going to be doing a heavy shadow piece, but for example you could make a big piece like that in shadow and then start coming up with other strands of hair here like that and start filling it in, and then you kind of get this dark shadow type of thing going on. And sometimes it's cool to have really thick shadow pieces like that. Another thing I wanted to show you is if you double click on the brush again and you turn down fidelity and turn down smoothness, click OK. I'm going to bring the lines back to the front. Now when you make something like this, it'll stay pretty much exactly as you drew it. Now it doesn't smooth it out as much, so if you have kind of a shaky line like that, it'll kind of register it a little bit. But you notice it's you have more control this way. So if you wanted to do straight lines, okay, those aren't coming out so good. So it's a little bit better than it was before. Trying to do fast lines like what on a piece of paper for cross hatching. So it's a little bit more controlled. There's still some, it's not quite what you want it to be. So you notice it makes some lines, it just changes some lines randomly like that. Especially if you have a line here, a line here, a line here, and you need to work in between those lines. It'll often ruin the lines as you're trying to connect. So that's the only downfall with Illustrator really. But like I said, for cross-hatching you can just open up another program, like a Painter or Photoshop or something that gives you more control like that. But this was like as you can see, this is really good for doing the base work. And notice there's some parts here when I zoom in where the lines look sloppy, where they're overlapping and stuff, like here and here. And so I can either take my time more when I'm inking to avoid some of that or a lot of it, and then I can then open, see right there, that's hard to avoid sometimes, but I can always open this in Photoshop again, save it as an AI, open the AI in Photoshop, and I can erase little things like that where little lines overlapping, I don't like it. I can go in and just clean up these little parts really quickly and it's no big deal. So I just like the way the lines end up looking in Illustrator, so that's why I use it. But I have been experimenting with Painter, because Painter can get some pretty cool line work. It just, you have to be more careful with inking, and nothing really beats a paintbrush. So if you really want to ink with paintbrush. But typically I don't do much inking anyway, because I do very light inking. That is, so Illustrator works for me because I don't get really heavy with my inks. I do most of the work in coloring, so I just do kind of basic outlines. I do the variations and thickness and stuff, but anyway, so as we can see then, an overview quickly of the style that we covered for the hair is you start with the major clumps, the major silhouette shape of the hair. Then you start working with clumps and layers. This one's over that one, that clump is underneath that one, the background clump. and then you work on filling in the white spaces within those clumps. And we just we talked about different techniques how to do that, how to have lines, different kinds of lines you can have overlapping each other. And so one of the ways was, let me find one. Well, I'll just draw a clump here really quick. So you have this clump, and you big white space, whatever you want to break it up. So you can have, for example, lines coming like this and then meeting up together. And so you can have lines like that inside of it. And then you can have a wild hair coming out like that, and you would erase in there. And if you decide to do that in Illustrator, then you can just remember that you did that in Illustrator and then go and erase those lines back when you import it back into Photoshop. Or you can take the time to do an Illustrator using the cut tool, but it's really time consuming and it's lame. It's hard to do, and it just takes way too much time. Right, so once you fill in, you start filling in those areas, and then you overlap hairs like we did over here, and erase some areas and not some areas to get that kind of look. And typically you just do that at the end. At the tops over here, you can leave the lines overlapping. Like I should probably leave like that line overlapping, for example, and maybe even that one. And then I'd have to go back in and make all that nice and smooth. I just don't feel like doing it right now. Anyway, so that looks all ugly because I'm not zoomed in and stuff, and I'm not trying to make it all perfect and smooth. But anyway, you get the idea. And then then the result is you end up with something like this, something that looks really complicated to do, but it's really not. It's kind of time consuming, but it's really not too complicated, and it looks pretty cool. The end result is kind of nice looking. So that's how you get that Marvel style hair. And then we'll in the next parts of the series, of this hair series, we're going to do it from mind. How do we draw this kind of hairstyle from mind, and how do we draw hair in general from our mind? So the dynamics of hair, kind of how it works, and then shorter hair and longer hair, and how do we add this coolness. So basically it's the same. Once if you already know how to draw hair from your mind, but you just wonder how do they get all that coolness, then now you already know. That's why I wanted to start with this first. Is this a lot of people now can already know how to do it. It's like, oh cool, that's all, you learned the techniques already, how to break up white spaces within the within the drawing, and so now you can do that and you have cool looking hair. Right, anyway, so I kind of feel like I'm just rambling now, but I just wanted to kind of talk about what we've covered and show a little bit more with inking and Illustrator and stuff like that before we move on to drawing from our mind, or drawing hair from our mind.